Steve Merrill back previewing the Sun Bowl. Tony the Tiger, they're great. The Sun Bowl, Friday, December the 29th, 2 o'clock Eastern. Not a barn burner like it could have been between Notre Dame and Oregon State, because this is a typical example of what's happening now with the modern bowl game. So many players in the transfer portal, so many players sitting out. Don't want to say it was a disappointing season for both squads. 9-3 Notre Dame, 8-4 Oregon State, but it could have been a lot more because at times these two teams are highly ranked in the top 20. Notre Dame, of course, probably even had national title hopes at one point, and it's going to be a tough go of it for Notre Dame here with numerous wide receivers in the transfer portal, at least four that I've seen listed. Also, Sam Hartman, quarterback, opting out of the game. A couple offensive tackles opting out as well. But then we look at Oregon State. Can the Beavers take advantage? I don't know. Oregon State's head coach is bolting from Michigan State, taking on the job there. Not sure why anybody would want that job. New head coach is going to be one of the former defensive coordinators, Trent Bray, but he is not going to be available for this game, which means the passing game coordinator, Heinzman, will take over as the interim head coach, and the cornerbacks coach will be the defensive coordinator in the interim. But they also are losing some players. DJ Ukulele, I play the ukulele. Blah, 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 blah. Clemson transfer, of course, now leaving Oregon State. Backup quarterback Childs, who took 100 snaps, is also going to be out. And it also means Ben Gerberson's going to stay starting here. So, look, this is a situation. We have a lot of uncertainty at quarterback for both teams. We have several receivers out for Notre Dame, offensive linemen out as well. No, it seems obvious, but the under is probably worth a look here. It opened 46.5, quickly down to 42, even see some 41 and a halves. 41 is a very key number. A lot of games can land on 41, 24-17, 31-10, 21-20. You get the point. So as long as it stays 41 or higher, I think there is some value with the under. As far as the point spread, Notre Dame was initially as high as a 10.5-point favorite. That's now down to 6.5, and a lot of uncertainty on both sides of the ball. I think the under is probably the safest way to play the Sun Bowl. And unlike Tony the Tiger, this game might not be all that great on December the 29th.
Hey, everybody, Rob Vino here with today's big game breakdown. Alabama and Michigan in the Rose Bowl. Number one versus four. I think this is, or two, three. The seedings um, escape me here for a second, but regardless, we've got a matchup between a couple of blue bloods here. And interesting, I think, in this game, the I don't even know what's larger than a flock, really. I was going to say a flock of money on Alabama, but so much money flooding in on the Alabama side. Not a lot of interest in Michigan at this point in time. And I kind of take a different approach. Get into a couple of things here, but I do think that Michigan in the end is going to be the right side. And it's a reason why I've kind of delayed on playing this game so far, because I think we might see even further line movement in this one toward the Alabama side. A couple of things that you see, you read, you hear that I think attracted a lot of early money. I'm going to start with, and these are not fundamental aspects of what's going to take place on the field. Let me just go to the situational or the exterior stuff first. I talked to a lot of people and hear a lot about this reaction of Michigan when it was announced that Alabama was in and Alabama was going to be their opponent, and how Michigan, people judging the looks on their faces as a team that was immediately frightened because they drew Alabama. And I just don't view it that way. I think Michigan was as shocked as, 50% of the rest of the country that Florida State wasn't the team that got in. I think just that pure shock. I don't think Michigan fears anybody, to sum that whole thought up. And this idea that we have to run to the window and play Alabama because Michigan's afraid of them because of the looks on their faces when the four teams were announced. I think that's a little bit absurd. I think Michigan at the line of scrimmage stands up really, really well against this Alabama team. Alabama, not necessarily the defense that we've seen in the past. And again, I think that this SEC pedigree, I think that the Alabama pedigree probably get used a lot here in this particular game analysis, where it's just not the same team. Remember, and I know this has been pointed out before, but this is a team that needed fourth and 31 in order to beat Auburn and even get to where they're at now. I think the Georgia game, on any given day, anybody can beat anybody. Georgia looked like they were kind of teetering, and Alabama got them. at that point, but I don't know it's the same here. Let me just start with the run game. I think Michigan's run defense is better. I think Michigan's run offense is better. I think the only thing that you worry about if you're the Michigan defense is Jalen Milroe's legs. And if you're going to give Jim Harbaugh and company 6 weeks to prepare for that, I think they'll be okay. The other side of the ball, where Michigan's offense is concerned, that's been a point of contention as well because Michigan didn't look real good offensively against Iowa in that Big Ten championship game. Some of that, obviously, let's credit the Iowa defense. Some of that, I think expectations were much higher that Michigan would simply line up and run at Iowa and be successful. They weren't. Only 3.3 yards per play. That's not a big number. However, they still won the game fairly convincingly, point margin wise. And I think there's a lot to be made for that where Michigan is concerned. If you go over their last 4 games where they played the heart of their schedule, the tougher teams on their schedule, the Penn States, the Ohio States, the Iowas, Jim Harbaugh kind of resorted to run heavy offense. Here, again, with a lot of time to prepare, I think you'll see more of the passing game implemented in this one. To me, Michigan has shown all season long the knock on them early was they hadn't played anybody. When they were forced to play people, Penn State, Ohio State, Iowa, the best in their conference, the best the conference had to offer, they were the successful team. They were the team that won those games. I think they come in here and they beat this Alabama team. Again, Michigan's got the chip on their shoulder. Alabama doesn't. To me, it seems like Alabama um, is almost riding a wave here of, we got here. Now it's only a Big Ten team. We're going to win again. I just don't know that that holds up in this instance. To me, the better defense lies with Michigan. I'm not going to say they're the better offense, but I think they're an equal offense to what Alabama has this season because Alabama's been so sporadic. So for me, the play here is going to be Michigan. Again, we're a few days out, but there haven't been a lot of opt outs. There's not a lot of injury news here. You're going to get the best of the best from both rosters in this case, and you'll get a fully focused and motivated game. So to me, the home field here, the Rose Bowl, doesn't really favor either side. Both teams will travel. I'm going to wait on this one because I think there's more Alabama money coming, but I'm going to be on Michigan here, whether it be pick 'em or, plus price. I think Michigan's the right side here.
Steve Merrill back here breaking down New Year's Day's Fiesta Bowl between Liberty and Oregon, an undefeated Liberty Flames squad, one of the few undefeated teams remaining. And wouldn't it be something that they pull the upset? They could go undefeated and have no chance of winning the national title, but that's not likely to happen. And the point spread tells us all we need to know about this game. As Oregon briefly was a 14.5-point favorite. And then when it was announced quarterback Bo Nix would be playing, head coach Lanning announced he will start and will play in this game. The line's now 17.5 across the board. And not only is because they're going to have their star quarterback, but I think it indicates the Ducks are somewhat taking this game serious. And that's what you want to see because Oregon is still one of the 2 or 3 most talented teams in all of college football. Hey, look, I liked them against Washington in the Pac-12 championship game a few weeks ago, and I was surprised they lost that game outright. Obviously, they were a 9.5-point dog for a reason because they were a really good team. They'd outplayed Washington on the road in the regular season meeting, but came up short. What's really interesting, though, is I said the winner was in, the loser was out, and obviously Washington going undefeated was easily in the 14 playoff. But you got to wonder, had Oregon won that game, both Washington and Oregon one loss, would it have been easy for the committee to leave them out since the Pac-12 is finished after this season? I think that actually might have happened. Comment below. Let us know your thoughts. If Oregon would have been left out had they won that game, and then maybe Florida State, the ACC champ, would have been put in instead. Interesting. We'll never know for sure, though, because it didn't play out that way. But the Ducks, if they come to play, should be able to name their score here against a Liberty team that, hey, look, they're having a nice season, 13-0. It's cute, but they haven't played anybody. They've been a favorite in every game. In fact, they've been at least a 7-point favorite or more in every game, except for in every game. They've been a 10-point favorite or more in every game but one when they were a 7-point favorite back in week 3 against Jacksonville State. They've played nowhere near any kind of competition like this quality Oregon team who has numerous NFL players in the roster, and many of them are going to stay and play. And once again, quarterback Bo Nix tells you that the team is taking this game serious. Meanwhile, Liberty is actually the team that might be without some key players, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They've got 3 of their defensive linemen in the transfer portal already, 3 of their top defensive linemen. These type of programs do not have a lot of depth. They're still a mid-major program, and I think that's going to be a major blow for them. They're going to have a lot of trouble stopping this Oregon attack. And even if Oregon has some backup players in there, these are still blue chip players that are better than most of the Liberty players, especially the Liberty backups if they're thin on the defensive line. So, not a fan of Lane, 17.5 points in the bowl games. But if you're going to play it, I think you got to lay it here. Won't be much of a Fiesta ball. No upset alert here. Oregon at 1 o'clock Eastern on New Year's Day should be able to roll and name their score against an outmanned Liberty Flame squad.
Rob Vino here with a best bet selection on the Armed Forces Bowl. James Madison, Air Force. Good game. And really good news just to start this off that what was predicted or projected earlier this week to be constant hourly thunderstorms in this game, that weather report has kind of been tamed a little bit here. You're going to get clear weather for about the first 90 minutes of this contest. Central Time, 2:30 start. And from there, scattered thunderstorms. I think I saw a 40% chance before this recording. These thunderstorms are nowhere near what they were projected to be earlier this week. So good news for field conditions here in Fort Worth. Let's take a look here because the quarterback and portal situations are big here. Let's start with the quarterbacks. It was not known until earlier this week whether or not JMU starting quarterback Jordan McLeod, because he was in the transfer portal, would he play here? Would he not play? He's playing. He's listed as their starter. Gotta like that. Other side of the coin, Air Force, they played without their number one quarterback, Zach Larrier, for about the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Zach Larrier back at practice earlier this week. Zach Larrier is your starter. Both of these guys make a huge difference in their teams. These offenses run really well with both of them. Just look at the results of Air Force without Larrier, and it's easy to see that they missed him. Only 2 JMU players have opted out of this game. There were 16 in the portal, but only 2 opted out so far. So it looks like they're in pretty good shape personnel wise. And for the Air Force Falcons, not only are they going to get Zach Larrier back, but they're going to get a wide receiver, starting corner back for this game. So, according to head coach Troy Calhoun, he's almost got his entire roster back for this particular contest. Motivation here, let's speak on that. For Air Force, it's the Armed Forces Bowl. I don't think you need to say any more than that. Air Force in the Armed Forces Bowl, they'll be motivated. For James Madison, this is a team that appealed to the NCAA to get into a conference, to be able to participate in their conference championship game in the Sun Belt. The NCAA denied it. James Madison is a team that appealed to the NCAA to be able to play in a bowl game, to be postseason eligible. While they didn't get the nod to go ahead and play in the Sun Belt championship game, they did get the nod to play in a bowl game. So I think that's why so many guys in the portal are going to play in this game. JMU fought very, very hard to get in. I think the starters wanted to be in a bowl game. It's the very first bowl game at the FBS level for James Madison. It's a big deal. Expect them to be motivated and focused in this one. The coaching situation for James Madison, of course, Kurt Signetti left for the Indiana job, and behind him, he left a shambles of a coaching staff to the point where JMU had to get 5 temporary coaches, and they took a coach, their tight end coach, out of the radio booth. Last year's tight end was actually doing radio analysis for JMU. He's coming out of the booth to be the tight ends coach for this game. In a lot of instances, I would think that this is a extremely big deal. In this case, because JMU is so veteran laden, it may not be as big a deal, but where it makes a difference is the opponent that they're playing here. Air Force is about impossible to prepare for if, in fact, you don't face option offense during the season. JMU does not have the ability to simulate game speed wise what Air Force does. And it's a reason why Air Force, I believe, their last 6 bowl games have all gone over the total, and simply because they get on the field and the non-conference opponent doesn't really know what they're in for, and Air Force hits you quick with a couple quick scores, and before you know it, the game gets over the total. I think that Air Force has that ability here against James Madison. It'll be brought up a lot this week and prior to kickoff about how JMU has the number 1 rush defense in the nation. However, that number 1 rush defense isn't against Air Force triple option led by Zach Larrier. I think it will take them a little bit of time to adjust here, and maybe the coaching staff being left a little bit depleted might affect that aspect of the game, the JMU defense against the run. I'm hoping so because I like over in this game. And Zach Larrier, a guy who completes passes for Air Force, 60% completions on the season, 20.1 yards per completion. Every 6 passes he's completed this year, one has resulted in a touchdown, basically because Air Force, with their run first mentality, always has teams close to the line of scrimmage and their receivers are frequently running wild. They do have a quarterback this year that can hit those open receivers for big plays, like the Air Force offense matchup against the JMU defense, especially early. Really like the JMU offense against Air Force's defense all game long. Air Force has had trouble with teams that have balanced attacks and teams that within that balanced attack can throw the football well. That describes JMU to a T. It's a very balanced attack, great running game, 186 yards on the ground, really good passing game. Most people don't realize that JMU threw for 288 a game this year. And in 4 of their last 5, they threw for 307 or better. Air Force had difficulty against the better throwing teams in the Mountain West Conference this season. Didn't defend the pass well against teams that could throw. They played a slew of teams that couldn't throw, and it somewhat skews their overall statistics. But I think JMU's passing game is going to have a pretty good edge here. In the end, I would just sum it up like this. I think Air Force has early opportunities, first half opportunities to put points on the board in the form of touchdowns. I think that with their ability to complete passes with Larrier, they probably can get themselves to 21-23 in this game, maybe even more. And on the JMU side, Jordan McLeod has been a tremendous find for them this year. I think he and that balanced offense will get to the Air Force defense. The weather conditions look to be, again, much better than they were forecasted to be earlier in the week. This total is only 40.5. It has started to rise a little bit more as we get later in the week. They're going to give me 41 as a winning ticket here, 24-17. A lot of combinations, 21-20 that get you to 41. I think this game gets you even beyond 41. Going to play James Madison and Air Force in the Armed Forces Bowl over the total as best bet for the show.